So you're interested in finding out a little bit more about your family, and maybe you did a DNA test, or you're planning on doing one. You heard that your family might have been from you know Romania or somewhere, right? And you really want to find more about that, right? Maybe you don't really know when they came over the United States. Maybe you have you know. A loose idea about things, or maybe you really don't know at all, right? So how do you get started? And I'm an amateur genealogist, and there are people who are a lot better than me, who know a lot more and are professionals on here. So I definitely would encourage you to seek those people out. And I'm going to promote them in the future. But for my channel, my content, my idea is just being an amateur person, encouraging other people to get into the idea of the hobby, okay, and how you can do it about yourself. So I mean, I've been doing it for a very long time. I'm 54, and I've been doing it since I was a teenager, right? Ever since when I was very young, and I had a school project, maybe in middle school, where I had to do a family tree. And so I contacted my grandfather through mail at the time, because this was in the 80s, and I asked him, to write out a family tree. And it was very helpful for me, right? And then he even called me up and with his very thick Scottish brogue explained some things for me. But how would you go about getting started? So what I would recommend is the very first step, right, is to contact those people who are still alive in your family. And I would recommend either using a device like your phone for notes, or a notebook, how I did in the old days, um, and write down the pertinent information. And I would recommend having like things that you want to ask grandma or grandpa, or aunts or uncles, and names and dates and things like that, right? So you want to know, did they serve in the military? You want to know when they were born, when they died, when their mothers and their maiden names. You want to know, was the name ever changed? In the spelling, things like that, right? Those are things that are important, right? And of course, listen to the stories, because you're not, once as you start going way back, right? Really all you have are the documents. I mean, I have people in my family, all I really have is their name, maybe an occupation. Oh, so and so, lives in Scotland in 1776. They were a tailor, and that's it. You might get lucky, and find out, like I did, one ancestor of mine, right, almost served the American Revolutionary War, right, from Scotland. He was put on a ship, and the ship was supposed to be heading towards New York for the what do you call it? The Battle of Long Island. Ended up in Boston after the British left, so it was occupied by the rebels, and they were captured and sent back. Um, but those are things that, if you can find somebody who's had served in the military, that's great. But a lot of times you can't find stuff like that. So, but yeah, so when you're talking to family, mom and dad, you start with your mom and dad, your aunts and your uncles, even your cousins. Um, and grandma and grandpa, and if your great grandparents, if you have them, and gather all those stories as much as you can, but also remember to write down the names and the dates of things like that, because those are going to be useful in the future. And I'll explain the next step after. So this would be step one. Okay, step one is just gathering all the information verbally through interviews. Okay, you're going to want to know, if they have a copy of their birth certificate, can you get a copy of it? Right? I mean, some people don't want you to do that, but you know, um, that is great for the future, because then you have proof of when they lived, and you want documented proof of certain things. And it might not be so important now, but in the future, right? When you're getting into, later on, like especially if you're interested in like the American Revolutionary War, and if you had somebody who did serve on the American side, in the American Revolutionary War, there, you could join the Daughters of the American Revolution or the Sons of the American Revolution, or the in the Civil War, the Daughters of the Confederacy, the Sons of the Union Veterans, things like that. Those are organizations that you could join if you were interested in, for whatever reason. Maybe you were a politician or a business person and be like, oh, look, maybe it looks good on your resume, but whatever, right? Those are things that you could join, but in order to do, you have to show the work, that you've done the work. So even if you've done a DNA test, right, and you link yourself to somebody else who says, oh, I'm related to Captain so and so that was at the Battle of Bull Run, that's great. Show it, right? Show the work that you've done the work. So, even if you're interviewing mom and dad, do you have your birth certificate? Can I get a copy of it? And your grandpa and grandpa, but definitely listen to the stories, because those are things that you're not going to get later on when you do find that Union veteran that did serve in the Civil War. Unless somebody wrote down, unless they were a prominent person that wrote a diary, or somebody in your family knew about it, and even those might be a little bit questionable. But definitely listen to those stories, because you're not going to get that anywhere else.